Never be cruel, never be cowardly. Remember, hate is always foolish, and love is always wise. Always try to be nice, and never fail to be kind. Some of the final words from Peter Capaldi's run at playing Doctor Who, and one of my personal favourite little soliloquies from the entire show. Not the only one, because the Doctor has had some pretty amazing little speeches throughout the years, but certainly one of my favourites. And it does describe something I've personally tried to do since a rather horrible and traumatic series of events in my life when I was about 15. And of course that was long before this particular episode of Doctor Who I'm talking about, of course, but when I heard Capaldi's delivery, I don't know if I've ever heard the sentiment more wonderfully and beautifully boiled down. Now, I will be the first to admit I have often failed, but at my best I do honestly try to never be cruel or cowardly, and always do my best to be kind. I think it's a pretty good mantra. Hello again, I am Blunty, and this video is not about my own personal trauma or the cobbled together morality I had to build for myself from comics and TV shows and movies when my childhood failed to provide me with any real role models worth relying on. This video is about International Pronouns Day, set forth only about 3 years back in an effort to make respecting, sharing, and educating about personal pronouns commonplace. Normalizing offering up our personal pronouns as we would our names, or our titles, or honorifics even. And when the subject of personal pronouns comes up, the leap of logic is often to think, well, it's a trans thing. Well, it's not just a trans thing. Or it's not just a non-binary thing. It's not just a queer thing. It's a people thing. I'm a person, and I, like most of you, have my share of trauma, my own set of scars, and like some of you, a few of them are deep enough to have filtered how I see and respond to the world and other people, and sometimes, often, it can be hard to be kind, but I do keep trying. My name is Nate. My pronouns are he, him, or they, and them. I like they and them, as it disconnects me from anything else but being a person. I was born with boy bits. I was raised as a boy, and I live as a man, and I have a lovely, smooth, comforting, soothing, manly voice. But I was also born a Gen X kid, in a broken home with some very poor masculine role models, and in my formative years in the 80s and 90s, the whole toxic masculinity thing, as we call it these days, was extremely pervasive and oppressive, and it has taken me a very long time to unwrap a lot of what that climate and my childhood did to me and my identity as a bloke. I'm absolutely a him, but I feel very relaxed being a them, because it at least partially, metaphorically, releases me from a certain internalized expectation of masculinity. I don't hate being a bloke, I don't resent being a man, I'm not put off by my own masculinity, but as any self-aware bloke will tell you, sometimes it's hard to balance what society has made you internalize about what being a real man should be, and what you feel and what you want to express, and when you want to express it, and where you want to express it, and how you want to express it. Fun fact on that subject, by the way, it is a documented fact that in group environments, when non-gendered pronouns are used to address the crowd, like how airlines these days saying, welcome passengers and guests, instead of welcome ladies and gentlemen, under non-gendered pronouns in these kind of environments, men in particular become more relaxed. Men become less combative, less likely to try and assert dominance over perceived weaker people. I'll try and remember to link that study in the down below. It is pretty interesting and says a lot about masculinity and gendered pronouns. Now, even though the gendered pronouns people have always assumed for me, about me, by looking at me, match what I expect, I still make an effort these days in many spaces to list my pronouns. Because when only gender diverse people are expected to share or offer their pronouns, it's one more way to other them, to separate them, to diminish them as part of our communities instead of including them. And this is why education and normalization about how, why, and when pronouns, gendered pronouns or otherwise, is important. It's about respect and it's about inclusivity. You have, I imagine, all heard the term white privilege. It describes a gap in what certain kinds of people can and do just kind of take for granted in the world without ever really thinking about it or even noticing it, or looking outside themselves with empathy or understanding that their experience, my experience as a white guy, is not everyone's, and assuming it is can not just be ignorant, but dangerous. Well, it's a similar thing with heteronormative pronoun stuff. Lots of us never really think about how we use pronouns. It becomes an assumptive reflex. It's so deeply assumed by some people that they actually truly believe that the concept of pronouns is a new thing the woke invented. And I'm not even exaggerating, not even a little bit. I have literally seen street interviews when people were asked, should pronouns be taught in schools? They immediately responded, often aggressively, that no, pronouns should not be taught in our schools. And if you're confused as to why that is a silly response, I'll explain for you in a minute. Now, for some of you, this video will be preaching to the choir. I know, I get it. For some of you, I'm sure you'll be hate watching this and will gleefully try to tear down anything and everything I'm saying. For some of you, you won't watch and just try to use the comments as a space to bait people into the same old circular arguments. I'm just talking to you because I know you're not listening and your pants smell funny. For some of you, hopefully this will be helpful in either learning something or learning a new way to communicate something to someone else. But today is International Pronouns Day. Some people, as I mentioned earlier, are acting like the very concept of personal pronouns is some kind of new woke agenda imagined into existence in the last few years. And while International Pronoun Day is certainly imagined into existence in the last few years, and they do have an agenda of education, pronouns themselves are as old as our language. They're literally just a basic facility of our languages, a way to refer to a person without using their name. This car belongs to them. Those people are loud. They kicked the ball. He jumped over the fence. She is an astronaut. When not referring to someone by name directly, a pronoun is needed. That's their job in our language. The English language is difficult enough without removing the basic concept of a pronoun. This isn't a philosophy. This is not politics. This is not an agenda. This is third grade language education. Pronouns. Remember? Nouns, pronouns, adjectives. Remember learning all that? When it comes to gendered pronouns like he, she, him, her, the only thing you are being asked to do now is show enough basic human respects, enough dignity, enough empathy to just use the right one. And as you're referring to someone else, another person, that respect is the exact same kind of respect you'd show to someone who asks that you call them Ms., not Mrs., or Miss, or Ma'am. Or someone who asks that you call them Mike, not Michael. If your name is Susanna, and you ask someone to call you Sue, it's not an imposition. It's not coercion. It's not some sort of unreasonable demand or agenda. It's just how Sue wants to be addressed. It's the name for themselves that they feel tied to, a small part of their personal identity, as all of our names are. That's all it is. That's all any of this is. But if someone keeps calling Sue Susanna, despite them asking them not to, any reasonable person would consider that rude, dismissive, even deliberately aggressive. Everyone understands this. It's not a controversial subject. It's just part of how our society works. Coming back to me personally, I hate being called sir. People will say it with the intent of being respectful, and I get that. I understand it. I respect that. But I hate being called sir, and I hate the way it makes me feel, and I hate the implied power dynamic between myself and the other speaker that comes with it, because it kind of puts them below me. They're calling me sir, they're being submissive to me, and I really don't like that. It makes me feel extremely awkward, and I will immediately, always, ask not to be called sir. And never once have I been denied that ask. Never once in my entire life, regardless of the situation, whether it be in a 5-star hotel somewhere or in a friggin' retail shop somewhere, when someone comes up and calls me sir, I say, oh, please don't call me sir. No one has ever denied me that. It is simple social respect. Everybody gets it. Please don't call me that, and they don't call you that. That is literally all anyone who tells you what their pronouns are is asking for. That exact same kind of simple social respect. The same human empathy. Regardless of your personal politics about any of this, there are things you don't want to be called. And if you tell someone, don't call me that thing, and they keep calling you that thing, you are going to take offense. I don't care what your personal agendas are. I don't care what your personal politics are. If you say, please don't call me that, and someone keeps calling you that, you are going to take that as an aggressive move. It's not about whether or not you believe someone when they tell you their pronouns. It's not about what you think they look like they should be called. It's about basic empathy. When someone tells you what their pronouns are, they are not their preferred pronouns. It's not a preference. It's not optional. It's what they are. These are not their preferred pronouns. These are their pronouns. Just like someone asking to be referred to as Ms. instead of ma'am is not considered optional. It's politeness, it's respect, it's part of our social contract with one another as part of a functioning society. Simple, basic level communication respect. And here's another tip. You don't even have to understand someone's pronouns in order to show them that self-same basic human respect. You don't have to question them. You don't need or deserve an explanation. You just have to show another human being the same respect you would expect in return. Now, we've all seen people who seem angry or put out or confused by this stuff. People who can't separate gender identity and biology and social constructs, and they call all of this a delusion. That's the word I often see, delusion. And you know what? That's okay to think. You're entitled to your opinion, because I can use that opinion to show you how shitty they're being too. Religious faith. Oh yeah, we're talking about religion. Brave, bold. Religious faith is a delusion. There is literally no proof, none at all, not one scrap of hard evidence of any godlike entity to exist, or even under the assumption that a god does exist, or many gods exist even. There's no evidence to indicate they're even slightly interested in the day-to-day goings-on of a bunch of bald apes spreading across the surface of a small ball of mud, hurtling around an insignificant star in one arm of one galaxy, in one cluster, in one corner of a universe so vast our minds cannot grok the pure scale of it all. It's utter delusion to think some personified God is listening to your personal, individual, deepest wishes and prayers and changing and altering the whole universe around that to meet the wishes of a special few people who read a special book and sing special songs in a special building on special days. That absurd delusion is called faith. You trust that it exists. You believe in the existence of this thing. You trust in the book. You have faith. And faith is important for many people. It gives them a sense of order, of hope, something to cling to when things get difficult, something to celebrate when things are good, something to share with other like-minded people. Faith can be terrific. I was raised Catholic. One of my best friends in my 20s was a born-again Christian. I'm not coming at this faith thing from ignorance of what faith means to people. I recognize its importance to some people, and I make no steps to take that away from them. Their faith is theirs. And right up until the point they start using it to demean, hurt, attack, or threaten, or harm someone else, I don't care what special windows they look at on Sundays. Go nuts. The whole thing isn't for me, but some of the hymns are quite pretty. I appreciate that. So even if you think a gender spectrum separated from the simplest reduction of biological sex is in fact a delusion, fine, no worries. You can believe that is a delusion, just as I believe that the gender spectrum is a thing that is just there. That's fine. We can disagree on that. Keep your belief, no worries. But don't try to weaponize it for the sole purpose of making someone else's life shittier. Someone else with a different belief, a different understanding, asking for your human empathy cannot hurt you. It cannot harm you. Someone else asking you for your human empathy, despite not sharing your beliefs, can do nothing but make you kind. It costs you nothing to show the same kind of respect to other people that you expect for yourself, or that Sue expects when she simply asks that you not keep calling them Susanna. And to leave off on the subject of religion, far more hatred and damage has been poured into this world by organized religious delusion than ever has been from the matter of pronouns. So if your issue really is with people you think are deluding themselves, perhaps start with organized religion. It's a much bigger target after all. Or do you feel more valid somehow, more powerful somehow in attacking smaller, more vulnerable, less protected people just because you find them more different than you are, or you don't understand what they believe, or what they believe is different to what you believe? What does that say about you? This is not rhetorical, by the way. I'm genuinely asking you to think about what it says about you. That if your issue is some sort of, well, they're just deluding themselves, go after organized religion. That, of course, is just a deliberate structure to force a perspective shift, not a genuine invitation to go after organized religion. As I have just explained, I'm perfectly okay with people having their faith, even though I don't share it. My only issue is when people weaponize their beliefs to hurt other people, to reduce them, to separate them, to provide them less opportunity, less respect, and less basic human rights and empathy. That is the only problem I have with different belief structures. I mean, after all, you could just be kind. Kindness is almost always easier and more pleasant feeling for everybody than hatred and anger is. To switch sci-fi genres, fear leads to anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering. Never be cruel, never be cowardly. Remember, hate is always foolish and love is always wise. Try to be nice and never fail to be kind.